I think a theme throughout my life and definitely in this role is, stay the course, trust the process, and just keep going, stay persistent.
This is the Penny Forward Podcast, a podcast about blind people building bright futures one penny at a time. I'm Liz Botner.
I'm Chris Peterson.
I'm Mo Carpenter.
And today we have Kolby Garrison, Development Officer of the American Council of the Blind, to share with us her journey about what led her to her current career. Hello, Kolby. Thanks for being here.
Hi, Liz. Hi, Chris. Hi, Mo. I'm so excited to be here with you guys.
Tell us about yourself and your blindness.
Oh, my goodness. Well, I was born 3 months premature, so I'm a retinopathy of prematurity baby, if you will, and grew up totally blind, have never had any usable vision. Remember having light perception as a child, and then that went away, but I've never had any functional vision, so to speak. But I grew up in public school, was mainstreamed. My parents never treated me any differently. I have a younger sister who is sighted and remember, doing all of the things that she did. Some of them anyway, dance and gymnastics and riding a bike and rollerblading and those kinds of things growing up. And, just have made my way through life as we all do. And find myself, now where I'm at with the ACB. It's certainly been full of twists and turns, but whose life isn't? But I've grown up around, I guess I'd say around other blind people. All of the kids went to the same elementary school. If you had any sort of visual impairment, we were all together and had a VI resource room. And so did that through elementary school. Then had an itinerant teacher middle through high school, who was wonderful. Then went to college and got my Bachelor of Arts in Communication Studies. And then after college, pursued a degree in court reporting. And that I earned the degree, but did not end up keeping that as my career because I couldn't get the accommodations I needed to pass the national certification exam. So had to find a new direction and figure out what was I going to do, and applied for several different jobs utilizing skill sets that I knew I had and I knew I would be qualified for, and again experienced that very frustrating aspect of life, of society not being willing to look past the blindness, but was persistent, kept at it, and applied for a different position at the time with ACB in 2021 and went through several rounds of interviews and was selected for that position, and then transitioned to my new role that I'm in now in February of this year. So it's still very new for me, but I'm enjoying it and definitely learning and growing from it.
Tell us now, if you would, a little bit about the American Council of the Blind and its mission.
Absolutely. So we are a national membership-driven organization, and our mission is to improve the quality of life for people who are blind or have low vision through advocacy and all of our other programs and services that we offer. So there are, I would say, 10 maybe key program areas, highlights of which are audio description. We've got our ACB Media Network, which you can listen to. It's 10 internet radio stations that are available with all kinds of content. And then, of course, advocacy is a huge area for us in ACB, and it's a very strong area that is continuously ongoing, of course. And then the ACB community and membership, that was the department I started with, actually, in 2021. I was hired as the Membership Services Administrative Assistant. And so for almost 2 years, I helped coordinate and schedule all of the ACB community events that are out there. And we are now over 15,000 events since March 17th of 2020 and still going. They average about, I'd say, 100 plus events per week. So there's always something going on virtually in the ACB community. And it's a great way to get instantly connected. Previously with, if you were involved in ACB, you had the national convention and you had special interest affiliates and state affiliates. But that was national convention in particular was just a once a year meeting. Or if you came to the DC Leadership Conference in, every March, that was another opportunity to get together and network with other people who are blind. But now with the ACB community, it's instantaneous and you have access to a support network and a variety of events that are all run and facilitated and hosted by people who are blind and for people who are blind. So the ACB community it's where I got my start, and it'll always have a special place in my heart. And is one of our largest programs as of today, and is just continuing to balloon and grow and expand.
How did you find your way to ACB originally?
Oh, good question. So I grew up following the blindness consumer organizations, never really aligned myself with any of them in particular, but followed the goings on. I remember actually writing a college entrance essay in 2006 on how ACB was working to make accessible currency and how I thought that would be really, really cool. And attended my first ACB convention in person in 2006 as well. And it was in Jacksonville, Florida. And at the time, I remember back then I was in high school, and I just wanted to go to the exhibit hall. And so I remember going through the exhibit hall, and there was all this technology, and I wanted all of it. And then also got to meet with one of the guide dog schools and actually got to walk with a dog. And that was a life-changing moment for me. So I'll probably never forget that convention for that experience alone. But then I went to college and still, again, casually kept up with all of the consumer organizations and what they were doing and their approaches and different things like that. And when I saw the job posting for my former position, I thought, well, I had just decided in January of 2021 to stop pursuing court reporting. And that was a decision that was very difficult for me because I had spent the past 8 years in school and had graduated, had earned the degree, and thought that was what I was going to do for the rest of my life. That was going to be my career. And so after having to take a new direction and drop back and punt, so to speak, and figure out, what do I do now? And like I said, I applied for different jobs I thought I could do well and experienced the very frustrating aspect I'm sure we all have of when people find out you're blind or when entities find out you're blind. It's an immediate no, this isn't going to be possible without a second thought or without keeping that open mind and letting me, as the person who is blind and has that lived experience, help you and tell you how things would work best, just having those doors kind of slammed in your face, so to speak. And so I applied for the position with ACB and I didn't really think anything of it. I mean, I thought this would be cool. It'd be nice to work for ACB. I think I could do that. And remember, having my mom actually help me create my cover letter because I'd kept my resume up to date, and so that was all ready to go. But I was like, wait, I've never done a cover letter before. So we put that together and submitted the application and just said, okay, I've done what I can. After you go through over a year of applying for everything that you can possibly think you might be able to do well and experiencing rejection after rejection after rejection, it's wearing on you mentally. But I am wired by nature to never give up, persist, stay the course. And so thankfully had all of the different rounds of interviews, and then was selected for the job and was hugely relieved when I got that phone call saying, yes, we want you. You're the person, we want for this position. And definitely remember just feeling a weight having been lifted off my shoulders to say, okay, I found where I'm going to start and don't know what's going to happen from here, but I was ready for the ride, and what a ride it's been, and I'm sure will continue to be.
Speaking of, not really knowing what would happen next, what made you decide to switch into your current role? Was there a certain thought that you had or spark that you felt that kind of pushed you into, you know what, let's try this?
No, I was actually approached from within the organization, and I remember that conversation when it started. It was, we think you would be really good for development. And I said, what's that? So I had no idea what, resource development was. And I remember thinking, you want me to do what? I don't have a background in fundraising. I've never had any experience with this. How do you think or know that I have what it takes to make this leap? And so conversations continued, and I just decided that the more I heard from different people that they believed in me and they really thought that I could do this and, had faith and would be there to support me. That was very influential in my decision to finally say yes and take that leap of faith, if you will. And, I've been in my position now for almost 9 months, which is crazy to say. It feels like just yesterday that I've started, and it also feels like it's been a very long journey in some respects. But I just, I said, okay, I think I would have regretted it for the rest of my life if I had stayed where I was comfortable. And my boss at the time, Cindy Hollis, was very influential in telling me to take this leap of faith, take this risk, step out of your comfort zone, because that's how you grow. And she was so right. I'm still learning so much about the field of development and how inaccessible, how little resources there are for development professionals who are blind, and how inaccessible everything else that is related to development is for people who are blind. And so a lot of what I've been doing is advocating, and I've seen positive results with, some of the companies that you write to when you attend a webinar and you have no idea what's going on because they don't verbally describe any of their material that's visual in nature. Advocacy is built into me, I think. It is something that is ingrained in me, and it's become ingrained in me from personal experiences that I've had, where I've experienced disability, discrimination in college, and just other times throughout life. And I remember VI teacher in high school saying, Kolby, I'm here to not just to teach the blind student, I'm here to, educate you as the whole person. And you are a blind woman who is living in a sighted world. And that didn't really become apparent to me until college. And I remember her saying, nobody's going to advocate for you but you. And she was so right. And I remember, in high school, she pushed me really hard. And I remember thinking, oh my goodness, she's such a tough teacher and so, so hard and fast rules, and this has to be this way because that's the way it is. And now I look back and I am so grateful, because she pushed me to become who I am, and I always just smile and tear up when I get to talk to her now. And she just says, I'm so proud of you. And I said, well, I have you. You're one of those influential people in my life who's had that indelible impact and who has helped me become who I am. So, yeah.
You started to talk about this, but I wonder if you could expand on it. What are some of the challenges that you have encountered in this development role? How have you overcome them? And then what have you learned about yourself after taking all this on?
Whew, good question. One of the things that I remember being very nervous about initially was I kept encountering situations where, materials weren't accessible, webinars weren't accessible, and that's still an ongoing process, as we all know. But I remember asking my boss at one point, I said, I I feel like a broken record when you give me something to do and I come back to you and I say I can't do this because it's not accessible, or I attended this webinar and I didn't get anything out of it because they didn't describe any of the content that was presented visually, in a form that I could use. And that was a big deal to me in the beginning. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, I don't want to get fired because I can't do my job. And thankfully, working for ACB, my concerns of that happening were assuaged very, very quickly. And so the lack of accessibility is no longer something that I worry about, but it is still something that frustrates me endlessly because there are so many resources. And I think resource development is one of those careers where blindness is not a barrier. And it's taken me a while to fully realize that and to, believe that. But I truly do now feel that I remember on my first day in my new role, our interim director of development, Bill Reeder, said to me, you can do this, and your blindness is not going to hold you back. Sometimes it feels like it does because of the lack of accessible materials. But again, I tirelessly champion and tirelessly advocate. And so I send emails probably several times a week to companies or entities, or make phone calls, one of the two, or both, letting them know when I encounter something that they offer that is not accessible. And, accessibility is also just a huge passion of mine. And I don't really know how that came to be or why that came to be, but it is something that I just absolutely love doing, is helping to improve accessibility in whatever way that I can. And so I think a theme throughout my life and definitely in this role is, stay the course, trust the process, and just keep going, stay persistent.
Would you mind talking a little bit about what a day or maybe a week in the life of Kolby is like for those who don't know what a fundraising or a development officer does?
Sure. Um, there are so many meetings, and sometimes it can feel like there's not a purpose for some of them. And then weeks later or months later, you see the result and the fruit of, what you've been trying to plan or execute. And so, lots of meetings. My primary responsibility is with our individual giving initiatives. So everything from our auctions that are held, our national conference and convention, our DC leadership conference, our monthly giving, our MMS program. So any sort of event fundraisers, and also just having relationships and cultivating relationships with donors. So that's one of my favorite parts of the job, is getting to talk to people and tell them, if they already know about ACB, then, we have way more in common to talk about, and the conversation just sort of flows from there. But I love also sharing what ACB is about and what we do with people who are outside of the organization, and really getting people who may not have thought about what life is like as a blind person to stop and really think. And that's everybody from, individuals that we encounter and then also corporations. I really enjoy painting that picture for people and bringing them into our world and pointing out to them, have you ever thought about when you walk in the grocery store and you don't know where anything is and you can't read the labels on any of the packages? How would you navigate that? Or, something as simple as crossing the street. So I just really love the relationship aspect of development and how you build relationships with people. And it's known as stewarding or continuing to have those relationships and build them over time and engage with donors. And that's one of the things I find that's really, really fun. So that's probably my favorite part of my job. I also, I think I enjoy some of the grants writing that I've done where I get to tell people again about ACB. Our associate director of development, that's her primary responsibility, but I've gotten to assist with some grants that we've applied for and or written proposals for, and that's really fun. And I just again enjoy like bringing people into a day in the life of someone like us who is blind. What would that be like for someone who's never really thought about it? So I think that's really fun.
I just want to take a moment to circle back. And you talked a little bit about those on the outside and looking in. And do you have any advice for them in joining a membership organization like ACB or any other membership driven organization?
I think my advice would be if you find an aspect of a membership organization that interests you, whether it be their entire focus or maybe just, one of multiple areas that they focus on, is to just try. And not every organization will be for everyone, but you also might find a home or a place where you feel that you belong. And I know for me, the most important thing that I have gained from ACB is the friendships and the people that I have met and just the peer support. And because I've seen other people's examples of cooking or trying something new, I have been able to do that myself. And it has inspired me to have more confidence in those types of situations. And so I would say just try. Not every organization is going to be for everyone, but you might find a place where you belong and might find that network of support and some of those lifelong friendships that can be formed as well.
What advice would you give to listeners who may be interested in either starting their career and or in making their next career move?
Oh, good question. I feel like I can try to answer this now. I think if you had asked me this a couple of years ago, I probably wouldn't have had too much to say, but I would say really assess yourself and figure out what skills you have that you bring to the table and or what skills you want to learn that would help you to be more versatile and to maybe excel at something you haven't tried before and seek those avenues and make sure that when you say you're competent at something that you are, but also be willing to admit when you're not competent in a certain area and be, willing to put in that work to affect that growth that could, make that become a strength later on, where when you started, you thought it might be a weakness or an area that you were less confident in.
Is there anything else that we should know about that you think we forgot to ask?
I don't know if there's anything that you forgot to ask. I guess I will say work does take up a lot of my life, but outside of work, I very much enjoy NASCAR, and I'm a just avid enthusiast of the sport. Also, I'm a big reader and then love engaging with companies about digital accessibility. That's something that I just very much enjoy doing and showing them how when you improve your website or your app or your product or your service, professionally and personally, this is the impact that it has. And, you can have an untapped market in people who are blind or have low vision. And when you fix your website or your product, your service, your app, whatever it may be, and let us be able to access it and make it truly accessible, that's another group that you didn't have access to before that you now do. And also just sharing with people that advocacy can be very tiresome. And sometimes, again, it feels like you're not making strides. But then when you see the work that you've put in come to fruition, or how you persistently have sent this company an email for 8 years telling them that their app is not accessible, and then someone finally listens and they make it accessible, that just, I love that.
How can we reach you?
You can certainly contact me through ACB. My email address is kgarrison, and that is spelled Garris as in sunshine, ON as in Nancy, at acb.org.
And since you did mention previously the community, if someone wanted to find out more about that, how might they do that?
Absolutely. I should have included that when I was talking about it. We have a daily schedule of community events that is sent out, and it contains all of the Zoom information. So the only way to get that information is through an email. And you can send an email to community@acb.org and ask to be subscribed to the daily schedule. And Cindy and Natalie there will get you subscribed, and then you'll start receiving all of the schedule of events. If you know of someone, or if you yourself are not as comfortable using email, we do offer a pre-recorded schedule via a phone system. And the number to call for that is 1-800-424 8666, and you'll follow those prompts. It just says, press 1 for Sunday, 2 for Monday, 3 for Tuesday, etc. And that will give you a pre-recorded version of the schedule. And if you do take that route, I always recommend that you have something to take down information with, because they rattle off meeting IDs and passcodes at a very fast rate just to get everything in. It's funny. I did that. That was one of my duties for almost 2 years. And I'd get feedback and they'd say, "You talk so fast." And I'm like, "I have to, because I have to get all this information in for you in, the time allotted." But yes, those are ways that you can get hooked up and have access to the ACB community. It's fun. There are fun events, there's educational events. There are a lot of peer support events where you can go and ask questions of people who might be going through similar lived experiences as yourself. And so it's really just an invaluable resource of support.
Speaking of support, if you're not sure yet that you might want to subscribe to the email schedule, or maybe you might want to, but you just want to talk to a human before you do that, does ACB have a main number that you could call and find more information about it?
Yes. So that number, that 1-800 number, I'll give it again. But so it's just 1-800-424 8666, and you can again follow those prompts and get connected with someone either in our Alexandria office or in our financial office or the Minnesota office. Any of our lovely people there can help and answer any questions, or they'll direct you to, whomever the appropriate person is.
Well, thank you, Kolby, for being here and sharing your story. We really appreciate it.
I thank you guys so much. I've definitely enjoyed spending some time with you, and love Penny Forward and everything that you're doing. It's something that is very much needed and appreciated.
Penny Forward is a nonprofit organization founded and led by blind people. Through education, mentoring, and mutual support, we help each other learn to confidently navigate the complicated landscape of personal finance. We do this through our website, pennyforward.com, through members-only group chats, through our accessible online courses, and one-to-one financial counseling and coaching. The Penny Forward podcast is produced by Chris Peterson and Liz Botner, with assistance from Mo Carpenter. Podcast post-production is produced by Bryn Lee at superblink.org. Transcription is provided by Anne Verdine, and music is both composed and performed by Andre Louis. For all of us this week at Penny Forward, I'm Liz Botner.
I'm Chris Peterson.
I'm Mo Carpenter.
Thanks for listening, and have a great week.